time for IAEI News Live. My name is Thomas Dimitrovich. Today, the discussion I want to have is on the topic of inspections. So we're going to focus the next hour on inspections. I'm going to hone in on the electrical inspection, but I do want to have a discussion of inspections in general. So let's have and begin our discussion on inspections on IAEI News Live right now. Okay, welcome back. Right. So, Michael Hofkin in the house. Felix Sandoval, Colombia. Good morning, I guess, to you, right? Yes, it is. I guess it is. So, that's awesome. So, Vince Delacroce is down in the Alabama chapter, and I just got a note from Ken Masters that he's promoting the IAEI News Live Tuesday sessions, 12 o'clock Eastern. Thanks, Vince Delacroce. Thanks, Ken Masters, and all of you out there in Alabama land for tuning in whenever you can. So our channel is doing great. We are continuing to improve it. Stay tuned for some more great, innovative things from the IAEI right here on the YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, if you haven't hit the thumbs up, if you haven't clicked the bell, I don't know what to do. You can lead a horse to water, right, Jody? Hey, Wayne Yannick, good to see you. Good morning. Jody Joseph Wages. So we're going to talk about inspections. And I'm being a little selfish here, again, because I'll be speaking about inspections down in Costa Rica. With our new partner, as we expand the IAEI to Central America. I said South America, but Costa Rica is Central America. And moving and expanding our reach globally is kind of cool. So let's talk inspections. One of the first things I did, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to bring up my dashboard. So this is NFPA Link, and I can't say it enough. It's a powerful tool. Indeed, it is a powerful tool. So let me give you an example of the capabilities on one way to use this tool. If you look at, you'll see the publications that I've clicked as favorites for myself. I have different editions of the National Electrical Code and 70E. You'll notice I have 73. I happen to sit on NFPA 73 as alternate representing NEMA. You'll see I have NFPA 790 bookmarked here and 791 dealing with the third-party field evaluations. And if you know anything about inspections, you'll know at some point, at some time in your career, you're probably going to say, look, we've modified this equipment. It's not listed equipment, whatever, and you're going to need third-party field evaluations. There are documents and references to help you with that. So I'm going to go to view all publications, and it brings up all of the different publications that you have available to you through an NFPA Link membership or subscription. Now I'm going to type in inspection. And these are all of the standards, the documents, the reference materials that are related to or have the word inspection in the title. You'll notice NFPA 73, Standard for Electrical Inspections for Existing Dwelling Units. We have, if you're dealing with fire protection systems, there's a standard for the inspection, testing, and maintenance of water-based fire protection systems. There's a guide, NFPA 78, a guide on electrical inspections. And then there's also a 1078. Where is 1078? There is 78. There should be a 1078 in here, and I'm not seeing it. But there is a 1078. Let me just do this, 1078. I type in the number of the document, and it's the standard for electrical inspector professional qualifications. So that's why I didn't find it, because it didn't have the word inspection. It has the electrical inspector. So there's another word we need to key off of, inspector. Let's search all NFPA publications for the word inspector in the title. There's 1031, Standard for Professional Qualifications for a Fire Inspector and a Plan Examiner. So, another important part of the puzzle is the plan review. So, and I know we have many members of our IAEI network here that do plans review plans. I would say, and you know, Wayne and Jody and David Engelhart in the house. David, this is right in your bailiwick, right? So, David, the plan review, I know in my opinion, I'm a design engineer, okay? And before I got involved with IAEI, I can honestly say my awareness of the National Electrical Code and the installation requirements were obtained through, I would say, on-the-job training, right? It would have been in some. My point is, as an electrical engineer, I did not get National Electrical Code training in college. I obtained my awareness of the codes and standards associated with my designs after the fact. And until I discovered the IAEI, I never really had, from a code perspective, from an NFPA, National Electrical Code, or building codes, I didn't have the mentors that I have today that have developed me. Having a resource like NFPA Link, like this type of a reference and a resource, having this, in my opinion, is, I can't quantify the value that it would have for a design engineer, a designer, installers, etc. So now we have NFPA 1078 is the standard for the electrical inspector professional qualifications. We have NFPA 1031 ES, standard for professional qualifications for fire inspectors and plans examiners. I wonder if there's plan examine. There's a lot. I'm not seeing. So let's go back to inspection. So we have NFPA 78 guide on electrical inspections. We know we have 1078 for the qualifications of the electrical inspector. Standard for remote inspections. There's another good one. And tests. So there's been considerable discussion on when you think about a project, for example, there are stages in the development of a structure. Hey, David Williams is from Alaska. Hey, Willie Snyder, happy Tech Tuesday, brother. Good to see you. What are you doing in Alaska, David? Jeez, oh man. Anyway, every project's going to have different stages during the actual installation, creation of whatever it is, whether it be a building, swimming pool, whatever. And in that process of developing the project, you may need an electrical inspector or any type of inspector, structural or otherwise, at the job site to look before you say cover it up. And one of those obvious times is when you have a foundation and maybe you have all the rebar in place, and before you pour the cement, you're going to need an electrical inspector to look at how the trench, whether or not there's plastic in there, because plastic makes a big difference. If you're insulating that foundation from the earth via plastic or other insulation type of materials, then you could have a problem with regard to it being used as a U for ground, right? So there are, I gotta mute my phone because we don't need them dings and dangs. So there are times when the inspector will need to look at something before progress is moves forward. And if you could do remote inspections, you may not have to wait for an inspector to get on site. But we have to have the guidance and the rules, the regulations, and all of those types of important details covered to make sure that what we do in remote inspection doesn't compromise safety, right? Reliability, all that good stuff. We want to keep everybody on a level playing field, on an even playing field. So in some cases, well, you've got a standard, 915. And I'll open up some of these, and we're going to take and talk a little bit more about that process of inspections. And Willie Snyder, he's in sunny Boulder, Colorado today. Back in Colorado. Good to see it's sunny in Boulder. So, all right. So what other documents do we have here? We got 1910, inspection, maintenance, refurbishment, testing and retirement of in-service emergency vehicles and marine firefighting vessels. Standard for the inspection, maintenance, testing, and retirement for in-service emergency vehicles. So you see the family of NFPA documents is pretty broad, but great resources for you. Let's take a look. I'm going to take a look at the guide for NFPA 78. Let's take a look at how it's laid out. I just heard something. Oh, I got a text. All right, so the way NFPA 78, the guide on electrical inspections, is laid out, you have your administrative rules in Chapter 1. You have reference publications in Chapter 2. Defined terms can be found in Chapter 3. Now, automatically, you're looking at this going, wait a second, Tom. I thought Article 100 had all of the defined terms. This is not following the style manual for the National Electrical Code. Okay? If you go to www.nfpa.org, I'm just going to go to 70. Let's do 78. And if we look at what's bad is I know where it's at when let's go to next edition. We know that the public inputs and we're in first draft, June 4th, 2025 is when you take public inputs. But I thought there was, well, I'm going to do this by going to nfpa.org/70, because I know where it's at there. If you go to the, not errata, additional information, you've got the NEC style manual. Man, where is it? You know, they just changed this. I'm going to go to... Codes and Standards, Education and Research. This is the bad thing about for professionals. I want to go to where it used to be a code and standards development. There we go, standards development. This gives you the journey of how a standard comes to fruition. And there used to be a link to the regulations and rules, regulations governing the development of NFPA standards, the guide for conduct of participants, technical meeting, regulations for petitions. There's your forms. Here's your resources. Glossary of terms, introduction to the development process, the manual of style. This document is just been downloaded to my hard drive. But that manual of style is what is being used for the development of this NFPA 78. And what you'll see in the manual of style is there's your types of documents, reference publication. So there's your technical style, tells you how to develop it. Here you go, right here. Here's your order of chapters and annexes. So chapter 1 is your administration. Chapter 2 is your reference publications. Chapter 3 are your definitions. Chapter 4 is through the last of the numbered chapters. So those are your different other chapters in the list. So basically, the documents are laid out differently than what we see in the National Electrical Code. All right, so let's go back to this document. So what you have in the layout of this document, you have your definitions or defined terms in Chapter 3. Chapter 4 are your general recommendations. Chapter 5 are your electrical inspection administration. Chapter 6, plans review. And in my opinion, plans review, very, very critically important. Then you have your field inspection is Chapter 7. You've got some explanatory committee, got some explaining to do. And then you got your sample electrical inspection forms and worksheets. So NFPA 78 is a very good document. And here's my thought process. If I'm a designer, Chapter 70P, Chapter 1, inspectors, pizza parties. You are absolutely right. Todd states, hello from Michigan. Thanks for joining, Todd. Smash that like button 3 times as always. Absolutely. Thanks, Willie. All right. So, in my opinion, as a designer, if you're an electrical contractor, if you're a design engineer, regardless of what aspect of project review, integration, etc., that you are engaged with, understanding the perspective of inspectors, whether they be an electrical inspector, a building inspector, plumbing inspector, structural inspector, perspective, what they're going to be looking for is critical. So 78 are important. That gives you a little view into the person who, or the people who will be looking at your installation. Now, I want to talk, if they've done that correctly, then it's a matter of making sure throughout the entire process that you adhere to those requirements. But if you had a interpretation issue, say Article 517 doesn't do selective coordination. Say you have a person who's very familiar with how 517 and the healthcare industry implement a level of coordination, and you apply that in Article 700, and it's not clear, and you get a good inspector who looks at that design and then says, hey, ask the question, are you getting buffering? Ooh, I have dropped frames. I have dropped frames. Hold on. Good catch, David. 1 second. Why do I have dropped frames? I'm not sure why I have dropped frames, gentlemen, ladies. Closing some things. I'm checking. I am checking on this. I'm going to close down my, I'm going to do a, I'm going to do a quick speed test. I'm seeing I have 31% drop frames. It is international. My bandwidth went down, and I'm not sure why. Ah, Lori in Omaha, am I good? I should be back. I switched to a different stream. So somehow I switched to a different group. So let me know, am I good now? Let me look at the chat. All right, am I good now? Yes, I'm good. Felix, thank you. All right, sorry about that. For some reason, my wireless, I just bought a new router, and it was going to the old router. So I am back in the saddle. No drop frames. Alrighty, everybody, we're back in the saddle. So here's my thought process. The plan review. So we're talking plan review, how critical it is and how important it is that our plan review process be in place. Selective coordination, great example. If you miss and you mess up the selective coordination, if you don't selectively coordinate an Article 700 system and learn that after you've already purchased equipment, you have to change too many things to meet the requirement. If you don't design for some of these requirements, it is going to be extremely expensive to fix after the fact. So a plan review will catch all of those items and issues. So in my opinion, it's very important. And I know not all jurisdictions will conduct plan reviews. But again, in my opinion, it is very important that your plan review be conducted. If it's not conducted by your local, if it's not required as an organization, you're probably going to want to go out and hire somebody or contract with someone who understands the codes and standards to do that review for you. Now, in NFPA 78 for the plans review, it says that the AHJ should establish the intended outcome for the plan review. Whoa, what are the intended outcomes for the plan review? That's a good question. So it could be that the intended outcome of a plan review is that they give you permission to build. It could be that the outcome is to report any of the deficiencies or areas of concern. And that report, and here's the other issue, that report could and probably will be used against you, or it could be used in your favor as well. If you if you say have a discrepancy against what was reviewed in the plan and from what was actually installed, you have that paper trail, so to speak. You know that somebody reviewed what was in the plan, and you got approval. Now, let's say that you did your plan review and you identified an error and you didn't correct the error in the drawings, and then you get out to the job site and they're looking at the drawings and they're going to look at that plan review and they're going to go, well, there was an error here, and they're going to look up there and they're going to say they never fixed it. Their installation matches the plan review, and in the plan review you flagged it as a problem. So plan reviews can help make sure that the installation process, when that individual goes out to the job site, that person address that there's no red tags, there's no project holdups because of the review in the field. Don Gannier says the plan review can be a great help, but does not let the designer or contractor off the hook if there are issues that were not caught at plan review. Oh, that's another good one, Don. Because remember, at the end of the day, it's not a negotiation. It's not sitting down saying, look, I don't have to meet this requirement because you didn't catch it in plan review. No, that conversation is never going to happen. And if it does happen, it shouldn't, right? Because it's not your get out of jail free card that when you have your plan review that you've identified all of the issues. That's why a good plan review is very important. Now, it won't make the plan reviewer look very good in that process, and there could be lodged complaints against a plan reviewer. I don't know how jurisdictions handle that, but if you were a designer, you were a contractor, and you were constantly finding errors during the plan review, it's the quality of the plan review that is in question. You can address that two different means. You can complain about it. You can say, look, they need better education. You can request IAEI to come in and do more programs, right? And help the AHJs in the area get educated, so to speak. Or you could say, look, I'm not going to rely on that. I'm going to engage with my own plan review, right? Because at the end of the day, it hurts the contractor, it hurts the owner, and everybody else involved when the project is stalled. Plan review might miss something that the inspector is justified to catch the error. You're absolutely right, David. Right, so your AHJ, it's a process, and we're all involved. And honestly, it's I think it's a topic that it merits an understanding, and we need to raise the awareness of how significant and how important the plan review is. So the AHJ has to establish a plans review time frame in accordance with AHJ requirements. Construction documents. So AHJ has to conduct a preliminary review of the construction documents to verify that this submittal is complete in accordance with AHJ requirements and encompasses the full scope of the proposed work. You don't want a piecemeal plan review. The inspector has to identify the details of the project based upon the construction documents, including the AHJ requirements for the plan reviews, because you may have internal requirements for a plan review, right? The inspector has to identify AHJ requirements that are applicable to the project. Review any historical records for the property. You may have to review the historical perspective of the property in question where the work is going to be conducted, and any previous permits. So you may say, look, we're doing an addition to a structure, and you may pull the history of that structure and say, wait a second, there are open issues with the previous installation, or you're tying into a system that is currently under modification, and you need to make sure that you align. Willie Snyder, the most common one is equipment that has too low of fault current rating on the, and there's another, man, that is another good one. I think I guess not. Thought I could put the chat up there. I don't think I can. That is another very good point. I can do this chat overlay. Let's do this. I'm going to do this because this chat is really good. Really good stuff. Control V. Okay. Let me see if this works. It's not working. I'm not sure why. So anyway, when a system, just trying to capture my thoughts here, when a system available fault current on Eli's here, excellent, and Robert from Omaha. When you have available fault currents at say you're adding on to an existing system, and they made a change to a transformer, they made a change to the system to accommodate a new add-on, you got to go back and look at the existing structure to make sure that you didn't violate something there, because you may, to Willie's point, you may have increased the available fault current for the entire site. A strip mall, I use this example a lot, fall back on. So you have a strip mall, and say the very one of the locations in the strip mall is has a new tenant, and the new tenant is going to have a workshop, and they need a lot more equipment. They're going to add a lot more load. The utility may say, "Look, we're going to have to change the transformer that supplies the entire strip mall because this one location inside the strip mall needs more energy, so they had to put a bigger transformer, etc. They change out the service. Well, now you may have more available fault current, and all of the equipment on all of these other existing stores, and the equipment in those. Now all of those other stores have equipment that's overdutied from an available fault current perspective. That puts you in a very difficult situation on who pays to address the issues in all of these other locations when you just had one tenant who moved in. So I'm still going to try it, and it's not there. So you have to think about the impact to the existing installation. So what this NFPA 78 is telling you, you have to review the historical records for the property, including the previous permits and past field inspections. You have to review and approve, and you should review any previously reviewed or approved construction documents. The electrical inspector should verify the occupancy use in the building construction classification. You got to make sure you're applying the right building codes and whatnot. So you have to understand the installation from a holistic perspective. And you have to make sure that the documents are complete. Check the date codes, right? You need to classify. I'm just looking at, so the way the plans review chapter is laid out in 78, you have the scope, you have the intended outcome of the plan review, you have the construction document submittals, you have the preparation for the plan review, you have the classification of any deficiencies, the plans review procedures. So that's another area. None of these documents really, they don't. So here's another aspect. And Willie and others, Robert, David Williams, David Engelhart, Eli, when plan reviewers just use boilerplate comments, it can be a challenge identifying what actually applies. Misused boilerplate comments can lead to lost time and effort. Oh man, Eli, very, very critical. Clarity in what the issue is. Those, and I've spoken to some inspectors who say they use either a violation that they find in the field or during a plan review as a teaching moment. If we all took that approach, if we all took the approach of when we find a violation, whether it's during plan review or when it's during a field inspection, if we took the approach of this is a teaching moment, whether it is what I wrote or what you write to describe the deficiency, or if it's, hey, come here, take a look at this, and I'm going to show you this is an issue, this is why it's an issue. I've spoken to individuals. I'll give you an example. I had an electrician call me one time, good friend of mine. He was frustrated. And in his example, he had an inside panel board and he had an outside service disconnect. The outside service disconnect, it would say a meter breaker, okay? There's a breaker outside that feeds a panel board that's inside the house. He put a main lug only panel board in the home. And the inspector flagged it, said it's a code violation. He called me and he said, why would this be a code violation? And the inspector basically said he needs to put a main in the panel board on the inside of the house. So I knew the area. We looked at the local codes. There wasn't anything in the local code. There is definitely nothing in the National Electrical Code. There was no transformer in between. It's a residential dwelling unit. I have a meter breaker on the outside of the house. Off of that breaker, I feed a panel board on the inside. And I said, there is no reason for a rejection saying that you're required by the code. And I told him, ask for the section that he violated. And when it came down to the very end of everything, it was a personal opinion and it wasn't a code requirement. So there was no teaching moment there. I guess what was the teaching moment was not code related. It was more of why that person said it's better for the homeowner to have a main in their panel board. That's personal opinion. You can't red tag it for those reasons. But if we are clear in here is the code that you're violating, or if there is a document and a design and in your installation doesn't meet the design drawings that were approved during plan review, there's another aspect of it that I would say there's nothing in the code that says you need to meet the plan. But correct me if I'm wrong, if you're an inspector out there, if the plan says you have to do X, Y, and Z, then we expect and we will inspect to the plans, which may exceed the minimum requirements of the National Electrical Code. Okay, Willie Snyder, most common one is the equipment. Even more often is the system has not been maintained. So Robert, maintenance. So I'm going to come back to that comment, Robert. Eli, when plan reviewers just use a boilerplate, we already talked about that one. David Engelhart, even though an improper installation gets inspected and approved, does not make it, oh man, that's another very good comment, David. We're human beings. We all make mistakes. We may miss something in plan review. We may miss something in the field as well. It doesn't mean it's right. Right? So, and vice versa. We have to, even when you're going back and looking at an installation, you may come to a house that was built, last week and the homeowner wants to do an addition, and you look and go, well, this isn't right. It's not to code. And you go, well, it got through inspection. Doesn't mean it's right. So very good comment, David. Robert, a very few have one-lines. Yes, Robert. Oh, my goodness. One-line diagrams, good drawings are critically important. Now, I would say, even in the custom home world, You may not have good one-line diagrams. In a residential dwelling unit, you probably don't have good, you may not have good structural code or diagrams. I know when I built my first home, I had a designer do all the drawings. I wanted to do it on the back of a napkin because I'm an engineer, and I started the process on the back of a napkin, but I eventually hired an architect to get the drawings for the builder, and for our plans review, and for our code officials. Willie Snyder, most existing equipment we run into is 10K rated mostly. That's a good point, Willie. That's like your bare minimum to pass anything, but you've got to constantly check available fault currents. I would say voltages rarely change, right? You're not changing out voltages in a power distribution system. Available fault currents, circuit rating. You may add loads. You may say, look, this feeder is now not going to work because we've added so much more equipment. You may have to add a new feeder, or probably, I would say, add a new feeder as opposed to change out an existing feeder. It's easier just to say, we're going to pull a new feeder, a new panel board for all of these additional loads. You've got to do that load calculation to make sure that whatever you're adding doesn't exceed the ratings of the equipment, the conductors, etc. That's all a part of a plan review. That's all part of inspections. I've had designs of existing panels located in kitchen cabinets or over countertops that has never been code compliant, and I would identify the date of initial install and provide the reference. That's another. I talked to another inspector, David, who would say when they go into a structure and they're going to inspect because of an added circuit or in addition to a dwelling unit, they're looking at the new portion. You can't go in and start reviewing existing. Now, that doesn't mean to, who was it that made the comment? I think Eli made the comment. No, David, you made the comment that even though the existing doesn't meet code, that doesn't make it right. But if you're coming into a project and you're inspecting something new, to start inspecting the existing installation would probably be a bad idea. And it's probably out of scope. But I think it's fair. And I'd say it's fair. And what I've been told by at least one inspector in a jurisdiction, what he does or what he did was he would say existing installation not code compliant, and then moved on to the rest, because his opinion was if the state comes in and does an inspection, even for an addition, and recognizes safety hazards, safety concerns, code violations, like maybe a panel board over, without working space, a panel board located in a wet location that's not listed for a wet location, things like that. If you don't identify that, you can't hold up the new project because there are existing issues. So what he fell back on and what he felt comfortable with was to lodge the identification of the fact that the existing installation is not code compliant, which then would at least raise the awareness to the homeowner and others, because really it falls on the homeowner's responsibility to address code compliance of their existing dwelling unit. It's not on an inspector's shoulders or others' shoulders. Felix, at the end of the day, who is the responsible for what happens with the installation? The constructor. So here's the issue, Felix, and I'm sure we're going to get some dialogue on this one. When you think about it, the person who is responsible are all of those individuals who sign off on it. So if you have a license and you're signing off on a project, you're a part of that. I think, I don't know, but I don't know this for sure, but I think you're probably a part of that value stream. And when I say value stream, value to probably legal, right? David, so what David is saying is that if they add circuits to a non-compliant panel location, oh yeah, I would agree with you there, David. Now here's the issue: if you're in a service panel board and it doesn't meet the code, you got to go back to your local rules and regulations, right? You've got to go back to that what your local jurisdiction is, how they define the scope of that inspection and of that work. If you are going to be modifying an existing panel board, which is not code compliant, I think it's within the jurisdiction's rights to say that needs to be brought up to code because you are modifying it, especially even if it violates the code of when it was put in. I mean, I would say that's clear cut. Sort of. But I get the dilemma. I completely get the dilemma. All right. I'm looking through the questions here, or the comments. So at the end, who is responsible? I think responsibility can be spread around, and it all depends on who's got deep pockets. The inspector is there to call out the gaps in the installation, not your enemy. You're right, Robert. The inspector is not the enemy, but you know what we like to do? We like to blame the messenger. That's, you know how that goes. David says he has a boilerplate comments that I modify to the specific installation for complete transparency. I like that. It's okay to have boilerplate comments, to your point, David, but if you can modify them to provide a little bit more value, that is huge. Eli, I know. Show me the section in the code that I violate. That really, and you know, so I'll tell you what some inspectors have said. I had this happen to me. We had an installation, and say the field sales office was saying, no, this is okay, and arguing with the inspector, saying this is okay. And the inspector saying, no, you can't do this for whatever reason. What I had the inspector do is say, I'll approve this if I get a letter from Thomas Dimitrovich on Eaton letterhead that says it's okay, right? And then that prompted the office to call me and say, what gives? And this is what I need, because the inspector is saying, hey, yeah, we're going to be okay with this if Tom says it's okay. And then I start looking at it and go, no. The inspector is right here. And then we get the right remedy for the situation. But that is like a calling on the carpet, saying, look, give me something in your company's letterhead. It's no different than saying, what section of the code am I violating? Because if you can't identify a section of the code that for the violation, then you really have to look at what it is that you're having issues with. Is it really a personal opinion, or is it a true code violation? What about local jurisdiction requirements for local areas? Absolutely. There might be local code requirements, especially in the area of when you're modifying an existing dwelling unit or an existing installation. That's when things get really hairy. When you are marrying in with an existing piece of equipment, how do you handle, how you proceed when the existing installation is not code compliant can be driven by the local requirements from the AHJ, from your jurisdiction. It is Florida law to provide a code reference, and it is yours to challenge if you believe it's not the correct reference. Absolutely. Don Gannier, in my opinion, the AHJ cannot enforce the plans unless they have a specific provision in their code adoption that says they can. What you say of that one? What Don Gannier is saying, if the plan review, if the plan said the conductor has to be this ampacity, I'm using this size conductor, this size overcurrent protective device, and this size transformer, if the drawings call that out, and the contractor elects to put in a smaller transformer because they did a load calculation, they're like, look, this guy's oversizing this transformer, I'm putting a small one in. And oh, by the way, they put this disconnect over here, I'm not putting that in because it's not required by code. And I'm not putting these arc reduction technologies in because, those aren't code requirements. They may be requirements of the specification from the designer who is designed it to meet the requirements of the client. But it would be wrong for the inspector to say, hey, these plans don't match the installation, even though they're code compliant. I'd love to have your thoughts on that one. I would love to have your thoughts on that one. All right. Jody just sent me a good note. Ah, man. We have a book. Whew, you're going to love this. Oh, man. Jody, wages. I'm telling you. Sometimes, look at this, guys. I think, look at this. Look at this book, Becoming the Electrical Inspector from the IAEI. Becoming the Electrical Inspector, let's take a look at what this is. Talks about as a career, on the job, public relations, industry communication, importance of CEUs, electrical codes, testing agencies. This is a very good, you're going to want to get a copy of Becoming the Electrical Inspector. So, whoa, that's not good. Becoming the Electrical Inspector, IAEI.org. And we go to store. Becoming the Electrical Inspector. Becoming the Electrical Inspector. There it is. It's 1995. Signing Becoming the Electrical Inspector. Is that sign in for your pricing? View the product. Becoming an electronic PDF of this document. Great resource for you from the IAEI. I would say that there's a lot of value in that reference material. I would highly suggest you grab a copy of that one. All right, so I like just taking the questions. Exactly, many variables to keep track of due to due diligence. Usually inspector's scope is the work on the permit only, not the whole building. I get that. Understood. But if they add circuits to a non-compliant panel location, I have an issue with that too, David. But again, I have issues with it. It would be a good discussion to have with the owner, the installer, and possibly designer. It is a dilemma. How do I keep advertisements from popping up? I don't know. You know what, David? We're working on that. We are working on we're working on that, and Paola and I and Rudy and others, we're working on helping make that go away. Robert from Omaha, and it might be a paid subscription. You never know. Tweak the boilerplate comments. Felix, I mean, who is going to be called first is the constructor that signed it. I would, you know what, Felix, I don't disagree with you. If there's a problem, if something happens at that site, yeah, you're right. The installer, etc. But then once things get escalated, that's when everybody gets pulled in. It depends upon the magnitude of the problem that's been found. I don't disagree with you. In case of trouble, who is going to be called first is the contractor. I agree with you 100%. Good rule of thumb is how close your service entrance is to the transformer, you have a good chance of high fault current levels. Yeah, you know, Willie, that's a very good point. Your proximity, the length of the conductors in the power distribution system, the length of conductors from that transformer that's out there on the road or in the back to the structure is a good indicator that fault currents are going to be very high. Don Gannier says the enforcement of the plans and specs to a contract matter between the owner and the contractor, and the AHJ is no business stepping into it unless they have a legally adopted rule that says that. Very good points. Very good points. Don't forget public safety. Absolutely, Robert. Public safety is the bottom line. So Willie says if you get YouTube Premium, then you don't get those ads popping up. I did not know that. Well, that's a good point. All right, so let's go back to think about the process. If we think about, you have the plans review, then you have the so if you look at the general requirements in NFPA 78, in Chapter 4, you have qualifications. That's the qualifications of the electrical inspection, and that's what we have 1078 to help with. There is a section called ethics. Fair, impartial, and professional. We should be that way on everything, but I like the fact. Let's look, there's annex material on ethics. It says the electrical inspector is an important and learned profession. It's a learned profession. As members of the profession, inspectors are expected to exhibit the highest standards of honesty and integrity. Accordingly, the services provided by inspectors require honesty, impartiality, and you know what? That is so true that consistently, you know, you can be a very difficult inspector. When I say difficult, what I mean is you can be a very detailed oriented inspector and an inspector that maybe your bedside manner is not the best. But if you're consistent, if you're that way with some but not with others. I mean, I've dealt with individuals, they say, boy, this guy's rough. He's rough around the edges. And in some cases, I'll get that person to say, he's like that with everybody. So there's the across the board issue, or only if you don't want to be the person that says, he's nice to this type of a person, but he's not nice to that type of a person. Or she's easy to work with in this case, but she's hard to work with in this other case. So you got to make sure you have your ethics down. Inspection objective, you want to be clear with your objectives. You want to be clear with what your expectations are. And that's in Chapter 4. That's your general recommendations. Chapter 5 has the basic electrical inspection, but what you're not going to see in here, in any of the requirements, and I did an article a while ago with inspectors, the process. So David Engelhardt, you do a lot of plans reviews. I'm sure you have a process in place on your approach when you deal with a plans review. And those processes are probably different than the process, I'm saying they're going to definitely be different than the process a field inspection goes through. And here's my point on that. I've talked to some people who conduct field inspections. There was a gentleman I think it was out of Florida, and he made the statement, he said, look, when I do a structure, because they have multiple people in their inspection organization, they go to a specific area in the structure. Let's say, I can't remember, I'd have to pull that article. I might actually find it here. What he said was that they have a process. They go to a specific area and they always work either counterclockwise or clockwise in that room. And then they go to the next room and the next room, and they work their way down to the basement. Okay. And the reason they do that is because if, say, for example, they're in the middle of an inspection and they have to leave, and let's say they're done for the day and they end on, I don't know, bedroom 1, and they're going to bedroom 2. If they're not the person that continues the inspection and someone else comes onto that site and they say, look, I ended up in bedroom 1, that person who's taking over knows the same process and can pick up exactly where the previous inspector left off, because they know that when they approach a field inspection, say final inspection, or whichever, maybe it's a rough-in inspection, they know the process that's taken. They know that when they go into that room, they go counterclockwise. They start, when they walk in that door, they go to that first receptacle or right to the right of the room, and they work their way all the ways around that room. And if someone said, hey, I left off halfway in the bedroom, I still have to finish the bedroom, the person who picks up for that inspector understands the process. So having a process down and making sure the entire team follows the same process is a critical piece of the puzzle. So I wrote an article a while ago, and I'll have to see if I can't find it. And if I can find it, then I will, there's an author's list. Here, let me do this. There's an author's list. If you go to the IAEI magazine and you go to, under the title magazine, and you'll see author's list. It's by last name. Whoop. So I'm just going to scroll down to my name. There's Vince Delacroce. There I am, Thomas Dimitrovich. You'll go to the author's page. And on mine, oh my goodness, they got all of my videos. Look at that. So if you want to go to a previous IAEI News Live video, it's all here. I've got 9 pages. I don't know that I can. Wow. Local code adoption, electrical safety. There it is. Inspection best practices and more perspectives. So I enjoyed doing this article. I'm going to put this in the chat. Control V. I'm going to put this in the chat, copy, and paste, and send. So I liked this article. I did a survey of inspectors, and I talked about how many inspections they do in a month. In fact, I might resurrect this survey. I'm going to resurrect this survey. And we're going to go out and survey our members. And I'll be able to compare the answers from those questions to today. And this was written in 2011. So, but I liked the insights that we gathered from this article. And look at this. I'll leave you, and I'll end this live stream with this. There's a huge opportunity to provide tools necessary for young and new inspectors coming into the trade. And IAEI is the resource for the knowledge. Keep an open mind. The code book offers many routes to a code compliant installation. Just because you haven't seen it before doesn't mean it defies the code. That's a good words of wisdom. Develop a process for specific types of inspections and use the same process every time. Consistency. That should minimize the chance of missing components of the inspection that are important. Dress the part. Wear a shirt and a tie and look the part. Learn the code and verify your code violations. Don't go by memory or what you think is in the code. I think a checklist would be very valuable to those who are starting out. Listen, look at this one. Listen before you talk and ask questions before deeming something as non-compliant. You may not be seeing the full picture. Realize that you do not know everything in the code. Even experts disagree on the correct interpretation of the code. Don't discount the knowledge of your customers, your contractors. Remember to communicate. When you listen to a different opinion, you just might learn something, right? The object is education. Either you educate the contractor or the contractor can educate you. Both are win-win. You earn respect. You don't, it's not given. So join the IAEI and talk to experienced inspectors. Don't be in a hurry. If something looks questionable, then cite it. A retraction, if you are in error, can always be withdrawn. Consistent, comprehensive. These are just great words of wisdom that I think we can all learn from. So enforce the code to individuals with the same respect and foresight that you would in justifying yourself to a judge and a 12-person jury. All right. I am 110. I went over. Got carried away. Thank you, David. I appreciate all of the comments that came in. The dialogue sort of helped in the discussion. I really appreciate everybody's input on inspections. Don't forget to, I'm going to put a link to the item that we just talked about in the chat from the IAEI store. Paste. So check out that reference. Check out the how becoming an electrical inspector book, PDF. It's a $20 download. I mean, why not? Trying to think of what else. Don't forget NFPA 78 and 1078, two good references for you. Remote inspections too, brush up on remote inspections. See how you can maybe work those into your inspection program. Be consistent, respectful, all that jazz. All right, everybody. We're out of time. We're over time. I hope you got something out of our discussion today. I really appreciate all of you who interacted. Felix, David Englehart, Willie Snyder, Michael Hofkin, Robert from Omaha, all you guys and gals out there. I really appreciate your engagement, and I hope to see you next week. All right, I'm signing off. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and please don't forget, stay healthy. See you next week.